The game obviously is a big game. It's a rivalry game. Certainly it's been intense for a long time. It's my 34th experience. I've seen a lot of different things during the course of that time, but bottom line is it's just a really good game for our state.
Yeah, Brady, this is the game Hawkeye fans wait 364 days out of the year for, and it's finally upon us.
Yeah, that's right, Colin. Iowans all across the state pick their colors, sit down on their couch, and get ready for a good old-fashioned rivalry football game. But hello, everyone. Welcome to Before the Kickoff, the Daily Iowans weekly pregame show, and your #1 source for Hawkeye sports. I'm Brady Barrett.
And I'm Colin Crithers. We're going to break down everything you need to know before the kickoff.
Today we're going to break down the Iowa State Cyclones, take a look around the Big Ten, and of course, give our predictions for this weekend. But first, we have to talk about that home opener last weekend, Colin. The Hawkeyes got their first win of the year over Illinois State, 40-0. The defense looked like its usual self, but despite a slow start, that offense looked much improved.
Yeah, that's right, Brady. Iowa was able to muster up 6 points in the first half, but in the second half, the Hawkeyes exploded. Caden Mack had his best game as a Hawkeye, throwing for 251 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also showed off his newly healed legs by running around, both making plays with his arm and to gain some extra yardage. Despite not playing in the first half, Caleb Johnson took the field by storm in the second half. He rushed for 119 yards on just 11 attempts, including a massive 64-yard touchdown run. He finished with 2 total touchdowns in the game. And the biggest surprise of them all, Reese Vandersee, the true freshman wide receiver who caught 2 touchdowns in his Kinnick debut after a 2-year hiatus from the position.
I always grew up being a quarterback, and then I switched to receiver. Just going, we got a lot of reps in practice, and it was rough for the first week or so, but I got back into it, just trusting my technique, and at the end of the day, you just got to go be an athlete and have fun with it.
And while the offense may be the biggest surprise from week 1, that doesn't mean the defense wasn't spectacular. The defense was led by Aaron Grace and his 3 sacks. He had just 2.5 sacks last year. Jamari Harris also added a big-time interception early in the game to build some momentum for the Hawkeyes. Jay Higgins led the team in tackles with 7, and his linebacker brother Nick Jackson accounted for 5.
And with a lot of big performances on Saturday came a few changes to the depth chart. Let's bring in DITV's Tara Gillespie to break down some of the biggest changes.
Yeah, that's right, Brady. You said it. After some big-time performances on Saturday, a couple of Hawks soared to the top of the depth chart. First and foremost, true freshman standout Reese Vandersee was rewarded for his debut with an appearance as a wide receiver starter. Despite him not holding a wide receiver position in the past 2 years, 2 touchdowns and 66 receiving yards seemed easy for the 18-year-old. Vandersee and Jacob Gill will work together to give the offense that needed spark like they did on Saturday. But that spark can't start a fire without another player rushing 119 yards and 2 touchdowns, which we can credit to Caleb Johnson.
He's really been practicing well and did a good job. And when he went in there, I wasn't surprised. He just, that's how he's been practicing, really focused and hit the holes hard and all those types of things. So it's good to see that. That's probably as good as well as I've seen him run the football since he's been here.
Johnson now joins Kamari Moulton as an alternative for RB1, but if Johnson maintains that focus, we might be seeing a lot more of him in games to come. Now with these changes and of course this big rivalry coming up, Brady, how many Iowans do you think are going to be tuning into this game on Saturday?
Of course, Tara, I think anyone who gives a darn about football in any way, shape, or form is going to be tuned into the game this weekend, but here's how some of the Hawkeyes feel going into this in-state matchup.
Talk of the states on the line here. We understand how important the game is, how important it is to the state.
Being from Iowa, how much this game means. It's a trophy game, and it's always super fun. It's a 4-quarter game, and I'm super pumped for it.
You just know when it's a rivalry game that everything's heightened a little bit, but you just want to keep the main focus on yourself and on your team, and handle that in the preparation throughout the week.
Yeah, it's a really big thing. You grow up watching the game. My dad went to Iowa State himself, ran track there, so it's a little household rivalry too, so it's a big thing. So just excited to go play in the game.
Yeah, Brady, the Iowa State Cyclones always play this Hawkeyes team tough, but this team could really give the Hawks a run for their money.
Yeah, Colin, they certainly could make things interesting this week. I spoke with Brett Twellmeyer, the sports editor for the Iowa State Daily, about some of the key players for the Cyclones this weekend. And of course, he mentioned their sophomore starting quarterback, Rocco Becht. He started against Iowa last year, but it was just his second start as a true freshman.
Rocco looked really good out there. I thought his poise, his leadership really showed after playing his first full season last year. And it really was prevalent on the first play of the game, that 54-yard pass that he threw to Jalen Knoll up in the double coverage. I think that showed the type of trust that he has in his team. And I think that you saw it the rest of the day. He threw for over 75% passing. He had 2 touchdown passes to those senior receivers, and he even pushed one in himself with that QB sneak. So I think that Rocco's definitely matured, not only just as a player, but as a leader.
And let's just say Becht has some weapons. The Cyclones boast a 2-headed monster at wide receiver with seniors Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll.
You can't talk about Jalen Knoll like anymore just as a player, as a person, and what he's stood for in this program, to be here for 4 seasons, to finally grow into this role. And last season against the Iowa Hawkeyes, he showed out. He had a pretty solid performance. Last game, led the team with 8 catches, 135 yards. And I think that he's just scratching the surface. Him and Higgins together are really going to lead this room that has a lot of young guys, new guys on this team. And that's going to be the 1-2 punch.
But if there's one thing Iowa fans understand, it's that there's more to football than just offense. But one of Iowa State's best defensive players, Caleb Bacon, got injured in their season opener.
Yeah, so Caleb Bacon, that one really stung. The linebacker, he finally gets up there to be the leading guy on this middle linebacking core, and he goes down with that lower leg injury. That's all we've been told. He did have a successful surgery. Matt Campbell did confirm this past Sunday. Sounds like he will obviously for sure be out for the Iowa game, some more games, but they are hopeful that he can possibly come back later in the season.
But that's not to say the defense doesn't have some shining stars. And for this Cyclone team, those stars live in the defensive backfield.
The secondary is really where I think that Iowa State is the strongest, and that kind of starts with their captain, Bo Freeler. He had an interception last week against North Dakota. He nearly had a second one on a tip pass. So he really proved that he can get it going. You also had Jontez Williams, a guy that I'm excited to watch this season, the sophomore. He had 11 tackles, team-leading 11 tackles last week. So those are 2 guys in the secondary.
Colin, this Iowa State team has a few pieces that could really cause some issues for the Hawkeyes.
Yeah, Brady, State always plays Iowa close, but as you mentioned, some pieces that are necessary to pull off the upset in Kinnick if Iowa isn't careful.
But speaking of Kinnick, Colin, with this being another home game, we have a brand new kid captain for week 2. DITV Sydney Goldberg spoke with Atlas Coleman and his family.
The following up biopsy determined that it was cancer.
At just 18 months old, Atlas was diagnosed with pleuropulmonary blastoma and was taken to the hospital for an initial lung concern, but left with a much larger diagnosis.
He's a strong little kid. He's full of energy, resilient, and he was like that when he was a year and a half undergoing chemo.
Then Atlas began his 6 months of chemotherapy, which led him into remission. Now, at 8 years old, Atlas is a fun-seeking, hockey-playing, and turtle-loving kid, and with his love for the Hawkeyes, is excited to step on the field as the Week 2 kid captain.
Told Atlas on a Friday night once we were all together, and he was just pure joy. So excited, did a whole victory dance. It was great.
On Kids Day, Atlas enjoyed being down on the field, meeting the Hawkeye football team, and received trading cards with players' autographs. In exchange, players asked Atlas for his autograph. After meeting the Hawks, Atlas is eager and ready to lead the team out onto the field for the Cy-Hawk game. From the University of Iowa, Sydney Goldberg, DITV.
Now it's time to take a look around the Big Ten, Colin. There's some massive games going on this weekend, so let's send it out to DITV Sports Director AJ Reister.
Yeah, thanks, Brady. It may just be week 2, but some of the biggest games of the year are happening this Saturday. Starting in Ann Arbor, the 10th-ranked Michigan Wolverines are hosting the 3rd-ranked Texas Longhorns in what could be a preview of a potential playoff game at the end of the year. Michigan is coming off a national championship year, and last weekend dominated Fresno State 30-10 on the back of possibly one of the best stories in college football. Davis Warren, a cancer survivor who walked onto the university and won the starting job over last year's backup, Alex Orji. But on the other side, the Longhorns made massive strides and found themselves in the college football playoffs last year and are looking to take an even bigger step this year. NCAA 25 cover athlete Quinn Ewers was taken out of last weekend's game after throwing for 260 yards in their 52-0 victory over Colorado State University. It will be a game that could be used at the end of the year when deciding who makes the playoffs and who doesn't. Kickoff is set for 11 a.m. on Fox, and the Longhorns are 7.5-point favorites in this one. Now 11 hours west, Deion's Colorado Buffaloes will be heading into Lincoln to battle one of the most hyped football teams of the offseason, the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Colorado is coming off a close win against FCS powerhouse North Dakota State, 31-26, and Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter dominated the headlines once again, with Sanders throwing for 445 yards and 4 touchdowns, while Travis Hunter caught 3 touchdowns and had over 130 yards. It was the defense that again had the struggles, allowing 449 yards of total offense. On the other hand, the Cornhuskers brought in one of the biggest recruits of the offseason in Dylan Raiola, and he ended up throwing for over 230 yards and 2 touchdowns in their 40-7 victory over the UTEP Miners last weekend. But they also showcased an impressive rushing attack, compiling 223 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. This offense could be for real, and with a struggling Colorado offense, Nebraska is a 7.5-point favorite with kickoff set for 6:30 on NBC. Now outside the Big Ten, another game to pay attention to is a top 25 matchup between 14th-ranked Tennessee and 24th-ranked NC State. Tennessee is coming off a 69-3 stomping of Chattanooga. Nico Iamaleava, who Iowa knows all too well after last season's bowl game loss, didn't play the entire game but threw for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, and the Volunteers running back Dylan Sampson found the end zone 3 times as well. NC State is coming off a 38-21 victory over Western Carolina, where Grayson McCall had a phenomenal game, throwing for over 300 yards and found his favorite target, Kevin Concepcion, for all 3 of his touchdowns. NC State with a win could make a massive jump in the AP polls, but a win for the Volunteers could have them back in the college football playoff talks with a ranked win early in the season. The game is scheduled to kick off at 6:30 on ABC and ESPN, and the Volunteers are 9-point favorites. Fellows, that's a look around the Big Ten and the nation. What games are you most excited to watch this weekend?
Now, I don't know about you, Colin, but I am rearing to watch Colorado and Nebraska go head-to-head. It's an old-school rivalry with a couple new faces looking to take over.
Yeah, no, that's a really good game. Another old-school rivalry. Marshall, Virginia Tech taking each other on. Enter Sandman at Virginia Tech. One of the best traditions in sports. Looking forward to that. Also, Idaho, Wyoming. Good FCS matchup from Oregon last weekend. So, I'm looking forward to some good matchups, some good old-fashioned rivalries this weekend.
All right, Colin, but now it is time for predictions. But before we get started, I have a bit of a big announcement to make. The Hawkeyes are playing for a trophy this weekend, Colin, so I didn't think there'd be a better time to introduce a prize for Before the Kickoff predictions. So here we are, introducing the brand new Before the Kickoff Championship belt. Last week was a warm-up for us, but this week the prize is on the line.
Brady, I must have this belt. That looks fantastic. It even has some good weight to it. I'm going to have to find a way to win that this week.
Now let's send it back to Tara to kick off the Cy-Hawk predictions. Tara, give us your Hawkeye highlight and your final score.
Yeah, Brady, with stakes as high as this Cy-Hawk rivalry, I'm picking my player out of the defensive pool. The Hawkeyes had a bit of a jump in their offense in the second half, but there was one player who remained consistent throughout. So I'm picking linebacker Jay Higgins. Not only did Higgins tie for the school record in most tackles in a single season in 2023, but he also led the Hawkeyes with 7 tackles on Saturday. The 6'2", 230-pound linebacker has proven himself time and time again, and even though he might usually fly under the radar, I think Jay Higgins is definitely the player to watch. And with the help of Higgins and this unstoppable defense, I have Iowa beating Iowa State 31-7. Kinnick Stadium with a sold-out crowd is unlike any other, and I think it will give the Hawkeyes just the right amount of energy to keep the Cy-Hawk trophy where it belongs. AJ, I know you'll be on Saturday. What do you think the outcome of this game will be?
Since this is the week that we are introducing the belt, it's time for me to lock in and retake my title. For my player to watch, I think that Sebastian Castro has some deja vu and picks off Rocco Becht for the 2nd year in a row. And for my game prediction, I have the Hawkeyes getting the big win and holding on to the Cy-Hawk trophy by a score of 25-7. The offense will continue to hum and hit its stride, and the defense will stand tall and get a safety in this one. Now, Colin, that's my prediction. What do you have for this weekend?
Yeah, AJ, I know you want to retake your title, but I got one look at this thing, and it is gorgeous. I got to have my hands on it, and I have confidence just seaming through my pores for this game as well. So for my Hawkeye highlight, I'm going to be looking at Caleb Johnson, RB1, to get some more carries against the Cyclones. I know he could be a more obvious pick, especially after last weekend. He was fantastic finding open gaps against Illinois State, but I'm going with him because he'll have another big opportunity to do just that. With Iowa State losing star linebacker Caleb Bacon, those rushing lanes could be wide open, and now having a full game instead of just one half of football after his suspension last week, we could see him breaking out for just another rushing touchdown. And that's part of the reason why I have Iowa keeping the Cy-Hawk Trophy in Iowa City. I've got the Hawkeyes beating Iowa State 24-14. I still think Iowa State is a solid team and will definitely keep it close, especially it being an exciting rivalry game, but at the end of the day, it's still a Hawkeye State.
Colin, I like the way you're thinking heading into the big rivalry matchup, but before I give my prediction, I asked Brett to give his score prediction for the Cy-Hawk Trophy.
I would love to pick Iowa State in this matchup, but I think that Iowa, what they showed last week against Illinois State really impressed me. The way their offense was able to score 40 points, the way their defense was able to force turnovers, not give up a single point. I do like Iowa this year again. Give me the Hawkeyes 23-20, very close game. I think it's going to be a really fun game the whole way through, but I do have Iowa in a close one.
Now, Colin, I was a little surprised by Brett's pick, but I can't say I blame him for this game. And I know everyone wants to get their hands on this new championship belt, but I put a few dollars down on it, so I'm looking to come away with it. But first, my Hawkeye highlight is the team leader, Cade McNamara. Cade's coming off, without a doubt, the best game he's played as a Hawkeye, and with the explosion of Reese Vanderzee, the elite tight ends, and this deep running back room, I expect Cade to pop this weekend against the Cyclones. Now, with the injury to Caleb Bacon and the experience this Hawkeye team brings on all sides of the ball, I have Iowa squeaking out the win 21-17. Since both teams and coaches know each other so well, I expect this to be a tight, low-scoring matchup, but the Hawkeyes will take home the trophy.
Yeah, Brady, I like the close pick, and I know you might put some money down for that. You might get it with how good this game could be, but we'll have to see at the end of the day who's taking home that belt first.
Yeah, Colin, we all kind of had the same idea, except for Tara. She picked a big-time Hawkeye win, but we'll just have to see how it all shakes out this weekend. But that is all we have for you today. Thank you, Tara, AJ, and Brett, and you for tuning in to Before the Kickoff.
Check out the Daily Iowan YouTube page for all the latest on Hawkeye sports. From the University of Iowa, I'm Colin Carruthers.
And I'm Brady Barron. Have a wonderful Cy-Hawk weekend.